Alright guys, this is a big day because today we're going to be unboxing and reviewing what very well could be my favorite Apple product of this year. It might not stay that way. We're expecting MacBook Pros later this year, but at least for right now, this is the best thing that I have ever seen. I haven't even opened the box, but look how cute it is. It's a tiny, tiny little iPad in a tiny, tiny little box. Oh my gosh, guys, I can't wait to get inside of this thing. Let's go. Video time now. I'm still looking at the box. I mean, I love it. It's adorable. Anyway, let's open this thing up. Now, straight away, we can already tell that Apple has not done away with the plastic outer wrap on the iPad like they have with the iPhone. Not entirely sure why. But either way, we get a very satisfying peel here. Oh, I ruined it. No. Now it's just a boring, normal peel. That's no fun at all. Oh my god, this is the cutest little iPad. Oh my gosh. I'm instantly in love. It's so cute. Okay, I really want to take the wrapper off, but we gotta do, this is professional. I'm a professional, and I'm not, look at this recycled material packaging. That's very nice, very eco-conscious there. Let's see what else we get in the box. So we got our usual documentation. Look at that. I love a good USB-C power brick. 20 watt. I might use this with my iPhone because obviously don't get one with the iPhone. Well, they don't look like they're color-coded Apple stickers, but then again, I did get the Starlight color, which is their new color that replaces silver. So I'm gonna go set this thing up. I'm gonna copy over everything from my 11-inch iPad Pro, and basically my goal with testing this iPad over the next day or so is, can you use it standalone? Now, a lot of iPads these days are really useful when you accessorize. When you spend $100 on the Apple Pencil, when you spend $300 on the Magic Keyboard with trackpad. But I'm curious to see if this iPad mini, being so small that it doesn't come with an Apple accessory that's built for it that makes it have a keyboard and a trackpad. Could you imagine how hard it would be to type on one of those? So it makes you wonder, can you use this thing completely without any of that? Basically like a giant iPhone. I'm really curious to see. So let's do that. So now that I've been using the iPad mini 6 and have it all set up, I'm honestly a little bit torn. So obviously going into this video, you saw how excited I was to get my hands on what is basically just a miniature version of the iPad Air, right? It's the design language that I have absolutely fallen in love with since the iPad Pro, but it's just, you know, smaller. And I've always been a big fan of the iPad mini as a concept. My first iPad was the original iPad mini when it came out in 2012. In fact, this is more or less the same as what I had. This is an original iPad mini. And really, you can see the DNA is still here. It might be 9 years later, but the iPad mini has very much retained its identity. It's almost the exact same width. It's almost, in fact, the exact same thickness. The only main difference is, obviously we have a larger display, but the device itself is actually a little bit shorter than the original iPad mini, and that contributes to some thinner bezels on the top. However, the side bezels are actually thicker on the new iPad mini than they were on the original iPad mini from 2012. And that's where some of my issues with the new iPad mini start. So the bezels are exactly the same width as on an iPad Air, but the problem is because the device is way smaller, they are proportionately much larger. And I have to be honest, it doesn't quite look as good as I think it would if there were, say, an 8.5 or an 8.6 inch display on this exact same chassis. Now, I get why you have bezels on an iPad, right? It's not the same as an iPhone where we want to get small bezels, edge-to-edge displays. You want to have something to hold, right? You want to hold it like this, you want to hold it like this, and the bezels give you somewhere to put your thumbs when you're gripping what is decidedly a two-handed device, even if only just. But the problem is, the old iPad mini had thinner bezels, and that wasn't an issue. So I think that should have been the benchmark for the new one. They should have defined the entire bezel by the sides of the old iPad mini and just made them go all the way around. I think that would have made more sense. But really the bigger issue with this iPad mini is the same thing that I love so much about it, and that is its size. It is just small. And while that is also its entire purpose, it's a drawback here, because I mean the issue is Apple didn't really change iPadOS to fit on this device. Obviously it has the same visual cue as the larger devices, but when you shrink it, you can't just shrink everything along with it, because the problem is, even though this is an 8.3-inch display, it actually sometimes feels smaller than my iPhone 13 Pro Max. Now that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because this is a 6.7-inch display, this is an 8.3-inch display, very clearly larger, and yet the iPad mini at times feels more cramped than the iPhone. Basically, the issue is, because Apple didn't really retool or scale iPadOS down to fit this size, everything just kind of shrinks. Now, when I set up the iPad mini, I copied it directly from my 11-inch iPad Pro. And before I've reorganized and sort of made it fit a little bit better, this is what it looked like. It was really weird to see. It looked exactly like my 11-inch iPad Pro, but everything was shrunken down to the point of being nearly unusable. And I think the biggest issue is the spacing of the applications. So when you're on the home screen, there's more space on the left and right than in between the icons, and it looks really weird. There's a ton of wasted screen real estate that would be much better used by increasing the spacing, increasing the size of the apps, maybe even adding another row. I don't know, but it just doesn't look right the way that it's implemented right now. And that continues in landscape mode, because it still really doesn't take advantage of the screen. There's like almost 2 inches of just empty wallpaper. Now, if you have an iPad mini or you're thinking about getting one, I do want to hear your take. Do you think that this screen size is too small? And do you think that iPadOS should be reorganized to fit this form factor better? Let me know in the comments below. Now, I was able to get around some of these issues by going into the accessibility menu in the settings pane, and I enabled larger icons and I increased the size of the text. Now, that definitely did help a little bit. It makes things look a little bit bigger, but it doesn't apply to everything system-wide, so it's still a little weird in some places. And in any sort of a third-party app that you would have on the iPad, things look very strange because those are not scaled at all. Here, for example, is scrolling through comments in YouTube Studio. You can see that everything is absolutely tiny because, as far as YouTube Studio knows, it's an 11-inch or a 12.9-inch iPad. Now, granted, after I spent some time and reconfigured things and got the home screen looking the way it does now, I'm a little bit more satisfied with the user experience of this iPad. And I'm sure that in a few software updates, Apple will reconfigure the home screen and make it less weirdly spaced, and probably just increase the size of the text a little bit. Another issue that I have is the keyboard. So both keyboards, both in portrait and in landscape, are pretty comfortable to type on. In landscape mode, I mean, obviously you're not gonna type with your thumbs because it's a little too wide, but if you put it on a table or in your lap, or you prop it up with the folio case, then you can definitely type on it. And then if you're in vertical mode, in portrait mode, you can definitely thumb type, and it's a pretty comfortable experience. So props for that. The problem is, if you do go into landscape mode, you just completely lose all of your screen real estate. There's just nothing left for the actual text to show because 2/3 of the screen is taken up by the keyboard. So it's not exactly the most usable experience in the world. So the biggest question when talking about this iPad mini is, who is it for? Who is buying iPad minis? Well, this is a question that has been around since the original iPad mini in 2012. Who was this designed for? Well, I mean, I can think of a couple of uses for an iPad mini. Number one, kids, right? It's small, you can chuck it in a purse, and it's kind of the perfect size for like toddlers to hold. So if you do need something for like educational games or content for your kid, an iPad mini plus a little case on it to make sure it stays protected is a pretty good idea. Another thing that I've heard of as being really a common use case for iPad minis was pilots and also doctors, because the width of the iPad mini is almost exactly the same as the width of the front pockets on those white like doctor lab coat things. So they're actually pretty perfect for carrying around in a hospital. So there's a lot of use cases such as that, but if you talk more broadly, you know, people like you and me who might be casual iPad OS users, is there really a purpose for an iPad of this size? And honestly, I'm struggling to think of an exact, like, specific reason why this makes sense for me, and yet I really, really like it. I know, it's weird. Despite everything that I just said, despite the caveats and the weird OS and the tiny text and the very strange, unoptimized look that this iPad mini has, I really, really like it. It is so cute and portable and easy to just whip out. You can just, pull it out of a little backpack and boom, there you go, little tiny iPad. You can play games on it. It's a good mobile gaming device if you want a larger screen than an iPhone. Boom, there you go. Keep in mind the Mini 6 does have the A15 with the 5-core GPU, so it does have pretty good graphics capabilities. You're definitely not going to be wanting for more performance here. I mean, the A15 is about as powerful as the A12X that's in the 2018 iPad Pro, which I've long said is fine, is more than adequate for iPad OS. And that's really impressive, actually. It speaks to Apple's pace of advancement that in 3 years, they've basically gotten the same performance out of half the performance cores. That's pretty crazy. So the performance is very good, the cameras are good, it's a great FaceTime machine. The battery life so far has been excellent. I've been using this thing pretty much nonstop for a couple of hours, a lot of screen on time. Started at 97%, now I'm at 70%. That's pretty solid given that this is a small device with an ostensibly fairly small battery, at least compared to an iPad Air. So it's holding up well in that regards. Definitely no iPhone 12 mini syndrome here. The screen, it's small, but it's really, crisp and bright. It's an Apple display. It's basically like the iPad Air display, but in a smaller form factor. There's something about the iPad mini. I just see a lot of potential in it. So I'm definitely going to be continuing to use this thing over the next couple of weeks. I'm probably going to make a couple more videos revisiting this thing as I find other use cases for it. It's definitely a product that I want to find a use for, but haven't necessarily found the sweet spot just yet. I'm curious to know what you guys think. Is the iPad mini 6 a disappointment? Is it worth it? Is it a niche that you could see yourself taking advantage of? Let me know that stuff in the comments below. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video.